Where to begin? Um, I think yes. Let's get it back on track. So I think I was sort of just trying to run through kind of what our approach has been to bringing supports into the rooming houses. Um, I think I was talking about housing TO before I was interrupted. So I think the point I was just trying to make was that as part of our process of providing support, we wanted to uh, engage with tenants to get a sense of whether, aside from simply affordability, if there was a role to be played for rooming houses in terms of Toronto's housing stock. And one of the things that tenants have told us is that they believe there is a role for this kind of model of supportive housing, so that for those that kind of are in a position where, based on past histories of trauma and isolation, where kind of where they really need kind of community-based supports, that there is a role to have these kinds of close-knit communities where we can both address issues around isolation, but also through kind of higher levels of staffing, uh, work on providing some supports for tenants around whether it's mental health, um, addiction, those kinds of things, so that then folks might be able to reach a state of stability where they can maybe then start to pursue other things in their life. So kind of shift from being in a state of really needing high levels of support to something where they're able to kind of manage or direct some things going on in their life a bit differently. So that was kind of a huge learning for us, and so we've really tried to kind of tailor our supports around that. And so the work that we're doing around the rooming houses on Parliament is a really nice extension of kind of some of that work that we've already been doing in the Wellesley buildings. I wanted to speak to one other thing before I pass along to Jen, and that is we've seen some really nice kind of reassuring examples of what really good focused support can provide. So we've worked with cases where tenants who are really struggling with mental health to the point where they've needed to be hospitalized to get some support, to where now those same tenants are kind of our most mundane, kind of boring tenants, in the sense that there's not a lot of action anymore going on. They're just hanging with friends and grabbing some meals from our community meals, right? So those are, for us, those are real success stories where folks can kind of move from being in a state of crisis to now just sort of, just finding things to do with the day. We've also, I just also want to kind of shout out our pest control work. We've also had some cases where we had clients who were dealing with years and years of just kind of having bed bugs, to the point where we have tenants who just sort of believe that, well, part of living in affordable housing means you have bugs. But we have cases where where we have tenants who had bed bugs for years and now they don't. So we've seen where kind of really targeted quality supports can actually make a meaningful difference in folks' lives, so that they can move on from just worrying about bed bugs to now like thinking about other things, right? Like kind of what kind of volunteering do I want to do? What kind of, how do I want my apartment to look now? Can I think about painting it, right? Like, so things like that are just so valuable in terms of tenant quality of life. A key piece, a key way in which we've approached the work. So Jen and I often talk about this like kind of three-tiered model, where we focus supports on the individual, then the house as a community, and then the community as a whole. I don't know, Jen, is this a good opportunity now for me to segue over to you to speak about?
Yeah. So thanks, Joel. I know Joel spoke a lot about the one-on-one work that this project really essentially started with, was a lot of that one-on-one tenant focused work and engaging them and initiating a support plan with them. And our housing support workers have done a really incredible job, because it was quite challenging to engage the tenants at first, because they were kind of like, oh, what's this mean? And I know Joel spoke to that a little bit. So once that initial one-on-one tenant focus got started, part of the other two tiers of this three-tier model is, the one-on-one support is the first part. The second part, and they're all, of course, overlapping and concurrently work together, The other part is supporting the needs of the individual houses, right? So people who live in Cabbagetown knows that there's often rows of houses, but there's also the individual houses. And within those houses, of course, there might be unique issues. So we started to implement, tenant support with the tenants as a whole. So pest control is a perfect example of that. So it won't just be one room, it'll be the whole house that we'll need to sort of mobilize all of the tenants and support that tenant community to make sure that we can eliminate pests, as an example, just one example. And then, of course, the third part is the larger rooming house tenant community as a whole. So, we have all of these houses within Cabbagetown. How do we connect these guys together, right? And part of what we really have been focused on in the community part of this project is strength-based community development. So we're looking at ways to motivate and engage people to connect with their communities around them, the larger community as well, based on their strengths, their interests, and goals, really. In some ways that we want to develop opportunities for tenants around these skills and strengths is creating a lot of partnerships in the larger external community. Some of those partnerships are Sherburne Health, Regent Park Health Center, and the Corner Drop-In we've done a lot of food access work with. And these partnerships, of course, will also open up other ways of supporting our one-on-one work with the tenants. So around health and safety concerns, for instance, or just general poverty-related challenges like food insecurity and food access. So with the strength-based community development is also incorporating aspects of the recovery model principles. So, meeting people where they're at, Joel mentioned that. That's a really core component. Making sure that people have a place to live is another core component of recovery model. And I think Dixon Hall in general is always looking at ways to incorporate the social determinants of health in the work that we do. And housing, of course, is the foundation of that, but it's also the social connectivity for people. So combating social isolation in our programs and programming and our partnership development is something that we've been quite successful at. For instance, we have a volunteer peer program that has over 25 volunteers on a regular basis. And even during COVID, the onset of COVID, some of the tenants from individual houses were recruited and were very enthusiastic about becoming tenant representatives for basic education pamphlets around COVID, harm reduction supplies, COVID harm reduction supplies like hand sanitizer, masks, and bringing food to their neighbors to reduce the lineups at our food services, which we do twice a week. We also have had our volunteer peer program essentially run a food bank. Of course, we had to scale the amount of time that we've done the food bank because of COVID, but it's now back in operating once a month. And that's really volunteer community run, and Dixon Hall and our program supports the operation of that in the logistics of that operation. There's also been gardening groups, employment training, and something that is really exciting and has a lot of potential for future is our community cleanup groups, which I know Joel has done a lot of work on in engaging some of the partners in the community around what that could look like for potential economic opportunities via employment for our tenants. So that's just a little summary. It's with some examples and programming and ways that we're trying to incorporate strength-based. But at the end of the day, our staff is always working to develop these programs in partnership and in consultation with the tenants themselves. A lot of our community development work has really been spearheaded, and the ideas have come from the tenants themselves and the community we work with. So that's why we've had a pretty successful participation rate and engagement rate with our tenant community, because it's really stuff that they want to do. So again, their interests, their strengths, and their skills. And we know that when we move into the future with the addition of these renovated rooming houses and the acquisition of these houses, not only is this going to be adding to the affordable housing stock in Toronto and trying to meet the needs of the housing TO plan that David mentioned earlier, but it's also going to hopefully incorporate some of the successful components that we've already learned about this project and the needs of people in a social way. And I know David and Eric will probably touch base a little bit more on that around some of those design aspects. If I don't want to be too vague, I apologize, but I also don't want to jump ahead of myself. But we do know that, and we have learned and we've seen the positive outcomes when you value inclusion in a community, regardless of their stigmas, regardless of their challenges, and their the devastating impact that poverty can have on people's lives. When you value their inclusion, and diversity of strengths and skills at the basic level, people will become invested in their community. They will contribute. They will become proud of their community. And we all know that when we're proud of our community, we invest in our community, we become good neighbors, and that's really what we're trying to support and establish here. We're really shooting from that value with the rooming house project. So I know I kind of ran through this very, very quickly, but I also want to make sure that some of the other question period can happen too. So if I can just pass it over to either David or Eric, if you guys want to take over around kind of how we came to this project, the phase that we're at right now with this renovation project.
Thanks, Eric. Sure.
I'm going to mute myself so there's no food feedback. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. Thanks, Jen. Thanks for speaking so well, and to everyone else who spoke before me. I'm mainly going to focus on the buildings themselves, and then be thankful for the trust and the confidence that the City of Toronto and TCHC gave to Dixon Hall to deliver this project. I think it's very forward thinking to invest in affordable housing while preserving historical assets at the same time. I think it's a brilliant way for us to move forward, and I'm really happy to be a part of that component. In terms of the projects themselves, as Dixon Hall has an opportunity to create housing and design housing that works with a focus on programming and social support. And usually those things often happen separately, where people will build and the social support will happen after the fact. And we have an amazing opportunity because of the work that David, Joel, and Jen have put into date to kind of blend those two models and develop social housing that functions with the aspect of providing programming, which is really great. And I think we're lucky to have that both sides of that coin playing out here. In terms of the projects themselves, we're working with ERA Architecture, who is an amazing partner in terms of their experience in not only affordable housing design, but historical housing design. We're in very good hands with the work that they've done. And I would encourage anyone listening to take a look at them and the other work that they've done, not only in the community, but across the city. And we truly treat them as a partner, as opposed to just a consultant, which is a really good start to the project. I should let everyone know who may not be familiar that the houses were vacant before we took them on. So no tenants were removed as a part of this process. The houses were vacant due to the condition was considered unlivable, which the rooming house team had a part relocating tenants to adequate living spaces, which is again good work that they do. Our intent was to demolish the interior of the building to remove the finishes that are derelict at this point and really start fresh with a new project. As the councillor mentioned, there's been a lot of piecemeal work done over time in the buildings, and it's been challenging to kind of fulfill the historical kind of original component of the buildings when it's just been, work after work after repair done. And we really want to start over and do a good project from the start, and be respectful of taxpayer dollars, and make a good project that's going to be affordable for the longevity of the houses. In terms of the forward-thinking design, as Jen mentioned, we're doing a lot of community consultation. I've had the pleasure of working with local community members to date, taking people through the houses, and Jen and Joel are going to continue their work in terms of client consultation to really understand the benefits of affordable housing design from the perspective of the tenants, which means changes, including the addition of bathrooms to units, and really a focus on what a tenant needs to feel confident and proud of their home, including having their own bathroom, which is something I think we can all understand. There's a lot of expectations regarding the work, especially from a city point of view, that it happens quickly. So we have to be respectful of timelines and work through, very tight expectations in terms of delivering affordable housing units. There's a lot of people right now who need affordable housing throughout the city and in Cabbagetown, and we do have an expectation to deliver these units hopefully next year by, I would say, end of summer. We would like to have the units back online, but we're working to meet those deadlines now. From a design perspective, we're still working through a lot of the details with the RA, so I'm not able to share definitive design details, with the exception of the fact that we are looking at a very forward-thinking design with solving issues like pest control, which Joel mentioned, security issues. Again, giving tenants the ability to cook, provide for themselves, have access to proper facilities, and really feel proud of the space they live in for the lifespan of the project. In terms of the exterior, everyone will be happy to know that we will be repainting or restoring the outside of the houses. I know it is a very hot point for the residents of Cabbagetown that the existing color scheme be changed. I think we want to respect and understand that point of view. So we are working with the RA to do something different with the outside that is in line with the other heritage restorations happening in the community. That will include re-landscaping the property at the front and the rear, repairing any and all brick, and really just completely restoring the entirety of the heritage homes back to their original 1880 design as much as possible, which I think the community really wants to see. And it's a pleasure to work in a community that does support affordable housing and see the benefit that affordable housing and heritage restoration can kind of flow at once and really improve lives for everyone in Cabbagetown, local businesses included. And that's really where I'm at in terms of design for the building and our plan for construction. I think in terms of our project, more and more information is going to be made available as we go through, either through the webpage or external communications. And I would encourage people to continue to ask questions and be a part of the process. As all things, construction, may be a little bit hectic in the beginning for Cabbagetown residents, but I believe that over the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to create a project that is truly innovative. And if we establish a precedent for this type of work and this type of focused social support development of affordable housing, we'll have the opportunity to continue to work in the future and do more projects within Cabbagetown, which I think is our goal, is to remain a long-term partner in Cabbagetown, providing social support and a responsible, housing provider. And that's pretty much where I'm at. Laura?
I think, thank you, Eric. I think we've lost a few participants, but I'm very happy to open the floor to questions. If you do have any questions, please write it through in the chat and I'll be happy to read those out. I think given the way the afternoon unfolded, that we'll look to schedule something else, an alternative session down the line or something, just to make sure that we do get the community engagement that we're hoping to see on this project. So again, apologies for the interruption, but if you do have any questions for any of the staff, for Mercedes, for Eric, for David, or his team, Joel and Jennifer, we're happy to take those. So please, I haven't seen anything come through yet, but give that a few moments to see if anything does pop up.
Laura, will you put the email address in the chat just so that people have it available?
I will.
Thank you.
We did get a couple of questions through the email already for people that were not able to stay on, so we can take those separately.
I do see one question that came in. And the question is, how many residents will it house?
So there are 43 units contained within the 4 buildings. We're going to try to stay as close to that resident count and bed count as we can throughout the construction work.
I'll add, we will still try to share this online for anyone who's interested in the content, but it'll take a little bit longer to get it up since we'll have to try to edit out the middle. So do please be patient if you'd like to see the recording up online. It may take a little bit longer than planned. Are you seeing anything else, Lauren? Any other questions coming through?
No other questions sent that I can see.
There's a comment. It all sounds very exciting. That's great. I'm glad. What's the timeline? Oh, Eric, did you speed through that? If you could just offer a few additional details around the projected timeline for the project.
Sure. So we're completing the design right now. We hope to start construction, reconstruction of the interior this winter. So I think November, December, and then we'll construct the interior throughout the winter, starting on the exterior in the spring. Hopefully completing the work, I would say midsummer of next year, that people move in late summer, early fall is where we're at right now. And I can update the construction schedule online if there's any significant changes to that plan. Thanks for the question.
Any last takers? Again, you can reach us at any time, roominghouses@dixonhall.org, and we will be in touch in terms of a makeup session or a way to continue sharing project updates with everyone as well.
So I was just going to point out that there are three Dixon Hall staff, at least. Sarah, Carol, Afsana, Aiko, and wondered if there's anything that they'd like to add, or have any questions about the project, or it looks like it's mostly Dixon Hall staff right now, so. Okay.
No,
We're all a bit shaken. I'm a bit shaken anyway.
Yeah. Mercedes, anything else you would like to add before we wrap?
No, I am happy we were able to exchange the information that we were today. Regret that we had an unfortunate occurrence and disturbance in the midst of our session. I think I've just opened things up for people to be able to join another session and to know that we're available, as you've said. So I think that's a great way to end, is to know that this is the beginning of something and we can continue the conversation, and really appreciate people taking the time today.
Okay, so I'll just echo that. Thank you. And again, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll get the info up online as soon as we can. And we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Lauren.